The reunion happened last Wednesday, live, 9:00. I'm so glad they didn't actually live stream it, because y'all know last year they tried to live stream it and the internet went up in flames.
Yeah, it was delayed. I think I remember it was delayed like an hour
2
and a
hours.
half.
It was crazy.
Like 2 hours, yeah.
So it was just a live premiere of things, but it was pre-recorded, which was great. The reunion was a reunion. I will say that the Lachey's and the Love is Blind production team took notes from last year, and they heard us on the internet complaining on TikTok about everything they did wrong, and they fixed it this year. Number one, Vanessa and Nick look good. I don't know if they got new stylists, but every season up until now, it's been touch and go. It's been touch and go. They look good.
Good.
Secondly, they brought back couples from past seasons, right? They brought couples back from past seasons to be a part of the studio audience. And those couples were asking more of the nitty gritty questions that we all know Nick and Vanessa can't take.
Yeah,
so
or like it
the
comes off a little,
to them.
they used to come off a little tone deaf.
Yeah, a little tone deaf,
when
a
they
little
would do
biased.
it, when they would ask it.
Yeah, so they did that. So that was the format. I would say of the Love is Blind reunions, this is the best one. Of the reality TV reunions that I have seen in my 15 plus years of watching reality TV, this is actually one of the best ones. Top 10.
Yeah.
Top 10, one of the best reunions, because it was well produced. It was seamless. They got into the nitty gritty of the questions that they needed to ask.
And it was on time.
What more can you ask for?
Yeah.
I only have a couple takeaways that I want to talk to you guys about. One is about who has become the villain of Love is Blind season 6, and I don't know how this happened. Like, it just happened overnight while I was sleeping.
Yeah.
Y'all put too much on Clay.
Oh.
Y'all don't put too much on Clay. This entire reunion, there was a big piece of it that was digging into each of the couples as they do. They talk about each of their journeys. They spend a considerable time on Clay and AD, notably because they are like the darlings of the season. They brought the most social media fodder. They encouraged the most emotion out of us, the viewers.
They had the most dramatic altar moment.
And so they got a lot of airtime.
Yeah.
Which I do not mind. They are not together currently. They tried to do a little something in the, it didn't work. They're currently not together. And so during the session where they were talking about it, Clay was sharing his experience. So it's been 1.5 years since they last recorded. He's said he's done some work on himself. He's felt genuine enough to me.
Yeah.
AD was sort of receptive to what he was saying, but at the end of the day, they're not together. It's what have you. To me, that was a simple enough reunion moment. It felt like each of them were sharing where they were at, where things went wrong, and the air seemed to be cleared. But for whatever reason, the internet is running amok with this Clay narrative. And honestly, y'all, I don't see how Clay is the villain that y'all are making him out to be on the internet.
What are their claims? What are their
a lot of the conversation is around the fact that he wasn't authentic in what he was saying, that he only said the things he said because he wanted to save face, essentially.
Okay.
And that he should have never been on the show to begin with, which could be said for everyone in every season ever. I mean, fine. But I did not like the narrative. And listen, I am not a male apologist. These men be trash, okay, to be clear. But I didn't feel the villain energy from Clay the way that I felt it from Jeramey. The way I felt it 1000%. He sat in his villain era, the way that I felt it from Jimmy. And how I low-key felt it from Kenneth, but they gave Kenneth absolutely no play. There was no conversation around Kenneth at all, so they just got a free pass. So Clay ended up being the villain of the reunion, and I just don't see it, y'all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I watched it with you, and what I saw was someone who is in a transition point of their lives. What I saw is someone that is trying to get their act together to become the man that they want to be. And this is, a lot of men go through this. A lot of men actually understand that they need to be going through it, and a lot of men don't. And then they either don't grow or they forcefully have to grow through a traumatic situation, and they find themselves losing. They have to change. Other men will continue to be toxic and have struggles and not show up in the way they want to and just live their whole life that way. Clay, from my perspective, comes off as a person who's seeing himself truthfully and what he's done and what his shortcomings are, particularly his insecurity with commitment, and how he saw the beauty of what he could have in a marriage. But he also knew that he had some demons inside him that he had to work through. So for him to say, I'm aware of my problems, I'm going through therapy to resolve them. I took time to find a therapist, and now I've got one that I'm locked in with, and I'm doing the work. How? What more do you want from me?
Yeah.
In the words of Tyrese,
what more do you want from me?
Like, what more do you want from a person?
Yeah.
Not even men, like mostly men, because men don't really be going through it. I've been through it, but like, what do you want from someone to acknowledge their shortcomings and to just try to fix it?
Yeah.
I guess you're a villain for that. I guess it sounds too good. I guess it's convenient.
I think it's triggering. I think it may be triggering for some people to hear that based on personal experiences where it may not have been the truth. But but this is where your discernment comes in, people. Like people can tell you things, and like your discernment tells you that they're not being honest, but because words are just words. But I just didn't discern that with Clay. I didn't discern that he was being dishonest, y'all. Yeah. And I just didn't. And my picker don't be off that bad. So I don't know. I just didn't.
It felt very genuine.
Yeah.
And I empathize for him in a sense. I've felt like I've been in that position where I've made mistakes in my relationship, and I'm at a point where it's like, I really need to be vulnerable and change. And even when he was getting to the point where he's like, when he was talking through it, and then he's looking at AD, if you truly saw their love, I felt like there was some love there.
I think there's still love there.
And for him to know what he did to AD and to try to talk through his feelings and his insecurities and talk about how he's working through it. And then see the person that he effectively lost through his actions.
That's heartbreaking.
That that'll make you tear up. And I have hope for them though.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm rooting for them.
Me too. I'm rooting for them too. And I know that some people are like, no. And here's the other thing, y'all. We have rather he come on the reunion and be a complete a-hole and be arrogant and have a new girl on his side and be like, it's been a year and a half. The man hasn't dated anyone else. He doesn't have another girlfriend. He's not pursuing anyone else or anything else. He still feels like AD is important to him. Yeah. He said himself he's in love. It's like, what more do we want from this man? Like, he's clearly not moving on. He definitely could have. Yeah. Like, what's the problem here? But I think for some people it may be too good to be true. But sometimes it really is just that. It really is just that.
Some people actually want to be better.
Yeah, some people actually want to be better. And is that not what we want for people? For them to be able to say, I made a mistake and I'm trying. No, isn't that not? So anyway,
and
he's not the villain to me.
Yeah, he's not the villain for me either. And I love the open conversation about therapy because that's so important.
And that's hard
for men in general.
That's hard to do.
Like, I feel like we find ourselves not being equipped with the tools to handle some of the impulses or the reactionary behaviors that we have. That those triggering reactions that we have. Sometimes we find ourselves ill-equipped. Yeah. And therapy truly gives you some of the tool sets to help you navigate some of those triggering moments. And I think it's so important. I think it was a great message.
Yeah, I do too. And it kind of goes back to the point that I said earlier. Life doesn't get easier. You just understand its ebbs and flows and its challenges, and you have more tools in your toolbox to deal with challenges. I would put money on the fact that if Clay were to redo this again, he wouldn't do it the same way. Yeah. He's got different tools now. He's got different experiences. And that's kind of what you hope for this. Should he have gone in the show and got married knowing that there were insecurities and things that he needs to work on? Arguably, no. But I don't think any of us enter into relationships as perfect people. Right. None of us.
If you wait for your perfect, you're never going to get in a relationship.
You'll never do it. So that's the thing. So that's my perspective. I don't think it was disingenuous, and I hope he continues to grow. Right. I hope he continues to grow. And I hope the best for AD. And this is the last thing I'll say about this. Y'all giving too much to Clay and not giving enough to AD. And what I mean by that is y'all not giving her enough, equally complicit, because if we're to be honest with ourselves, the same way Clay he been the same since day one. He's been the same since day one. He's shared and been transparent about his challenges, his reluctancy around commitment, and she moved forward anyway.
Yeah. AD heard what we heard, which was every now and then he flip flop.
And she decided to still do it. And so
she was asked, she said, I do.
Right. And she's also, and another thing that I want to give AD a little bit heat for is that she's also the person who, after the reunion, ended up dating Matthew, who was the guy who was saying the same things to her and the other girl while they were in the pods, and literally used the death of her father to manipulate her decision against her. So I say all this to say that I don't think AD is a bad person either. I think she's probably grown quite a bit on the show as well. But when two people have they're just not, they may be good for each other, they're just not right for each other in that moment in time. I think that's what happened with Clay and AD.
Yeah.
I think AD has some growing to do. Clay has some growing to do. I think AD needs to do a better job of discerning herself around what people are telling you is usually what they're telling you. And their actions for sure are going to tell you what it is that they're about. So that level of discernment for her. And then Clay, the additional growth from an emotional perspective as well.
Yeah, showing up and healing from the trauma that he's been through and defining a new path for himself.
Yeah, and I was happy that he said that too, that he was ready to let go of his parents' stuff, because I think a lot of us can probably relate to being raised a certain way and seeing certain things and carrying those things with us as if that's our own armor, our own bags to carry, and it's not. And so I'm glad that he said that, and that to me resonated with home, because there are some things I'm like, oh yeah, there are things that I should potentially let go, because that's not me, that's not my stuff. You can break the chains and start anew for yourself outside of what you've been taught and seen and have learned.
Yeah, no doubt. It just seemed real, and it was a real discussion. Meanwhile, you have people like what's that guy named Jeramey?
Oh, Jeramey and Sarah Ann.
When he's asked about the events that happened, you see him like trying to weasel his way out of it.
Lie.
I think at one point he was like, I don't recall on something. It's like, what are you talking? He's like tap dancing his way around the truth instead of living truthfully and being transparent. And because the transparency requires you to be accountable. And I think that's kind of what Jeramey was avoiding, is accountability. Because accountability, you got to do the work, and you're acknowledging that what you did was a misstep, and you wouldn't do it again. Avoiding accountability gives you room to kind of do it again.
Yeah.
It's like, be a little sneaky.
And that's what he wants to do. Jeremy's a sneaky snake. And so those two are so polarizing to me.
Yeah.
like Jeramey and Clay, they're two different people do two different scenarios. And it was disappointing to see, honestly, Jeramey and Sarah Ann. I was kind of annoyed at the fact that they brought Sarah Ann on. Only because what more is there to say? So for those who don't know, Jeramey and Sarah Ann was the woman that he did not choose in the pods, but they ended up being together in the real world, are now together, quote unquote, on and off. But apparently they're together, but they're just such a mess. Like they're two people who aren't accountable to their actions. And Sarah Ann in particular, I don't like the term pick me. Pick me, for those who don't know, is a term that is often given to women who seemingly will let go of all sorts of morals, relationships, and sound decision making in an attempt to have get into a relationship with a guy. So they'll do anything to be picked, hence the term pick me. I don't know if Sarah Ann is a pick me per se, or if she's a woman who just wants to win. Because if we think about Jeramey ain't no prize. Jeramey is a liar. He's not the most handsome man you've ever seen. He's recently out of an engagement with somebody else.
He was engaged when she was talking to him.
Yeah, so
that's not the best guy to go after, if an engaged one.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to be. And before coming on the show, he was engaged to somebody before coming onto the show. So he's been engaged 2-3 times. It's just very confusing. So for someone like Sarah Ann to fight so hard to be with someone like Jeramey, to me, again, this is the discernment piece here. And like for her, I feel like she's one of those people who just likes to win. Like if there's a fight between you and somebody else
over something that's not worth it.
So, you want to win as opposed to walking away.
Right.
And sure, at the reunion, she won Jeramey, but is Jeramey something to be won? No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So those are my two biggest takeaways from the reunion. Y'all give Clay too much and don't give AD enough. And Jeramey's the real villain, and Sarah Ann is coming in at number 2.
Right.
Because those two are chaotic.
Speaking of villain, I kind of felt like production was a villain
Oh.
Nick Lachey and them.
Nick Lachey and them.
When they brought that one guy out that looks like a brawny man. What's that one guy?
Trevor.
When they brought Trevor out. And
that's actually one of the highlights of the
It was like, and it just blindsided him out the gate.
That was nasty work.
With the screenshots. Work. First of all, they had him held in the back like some, like they were like they were waiting for the circus act to come out.
And then
they're like, they brought out and they bombarded him.
Brawly in this terrible outfit. And I was like, oh, Trevor.
They bombard him with these text screenshots and they calling out all this stuff he was saying to the woman that he was with before he came on the show. That he texted like, I love you and all this stuff. I can't wait to be with you.
I want to marry you.
I want to marry you.
After leaving the show.
I don't think he was ready for that. Clearly, he wasn't ready. I think himself said I wasn't ready.
When they released those text messages, y'all, of exposing the conversations he had with the girl outside of the show.
Yeah.
He literally stood there like this.
I felt so bad watching
eyes
that.
To the flow. That man did not move for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think he had like a panic attack.
Yeah, because the processing of it all,
that
I'm sure
was
overwhelming,
jarring, and I think that was very shady. What production did,
very shady. But I love it. That's what I mean by one of the best reunions of all time. I loved it. Yeah. But for him, oh my gosh, I can imagine that.
It was like watching
lot.
Maury.
Yeah, really.
Like, all right, bring him out.
Bring him out. He was not ready. Talk about someone who shouldn't have been on the show. He should not have been on the show. Like a clear example of someone who just was doing it to do it.